Hi everyone, this is Ali John Chaudhary, psychotherapist, and today I'm here with Fern Schumer Chapman, author, and today we're going to delve into a very interesting question for our sibling estrangement community. And the question is, am I the narcissist? A lot of times, we can come up with all sorts of different concerns that can happen when it comes to narcissism, and we can be accused of many things when it comes to experiencing, of course, sibling estrangement. Of course, narcissism exists on a spectrum, and it's normal for us to exhibit some traits here or there, without it being, of course, full blown, right? And because many of us are already empathic in our community and question ourselves, it's always a good idea to explore if we are exhibiting narcissistic traits or not. So, in this episode, we'll be exploring what motivates us to be concerned about such things. It's great to have you here, Fern. Thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here. I was just thinking while you were talking about the blame shifting that occurs when there is a narcissistic sibling. So there's a lot of confusion over who truly is the narcissist. And I would argue if you're asking yourself that question, you're likely not the narcissist, because narcissists are not introspective and they're not self-aware, and they don't pose that question to themselves.
You're so right? That's the thing too. And I think both of us absolutely agree on this, right? If you're even asking that question, it's already a good sign, So you're so right. And I think that, of course, it's going to be good for us to delve into some of these factors, right? Because I think that a lot of times, we get exposed to certain concepts and we really want to see in some ways if that's part of us or not, right?
Right. Right. And I think what you said in the beginning is so important, that narcissism is present in all of us to some extent. But true narcissists are using people for supply, and their relationships are extremely transactional and not reciprocal.
Exactly. So that's really, really important, and some of the factors that present in some of the people we have in our community, of course, and something we very much encourage is self-reflection, right? Engaging in self-reflection and introspection often leads individuals to consider what their behavior has in terms of impacts on others, right? So we keep coming back to it, but it's very true that if we're wondering about narcissism, it's a sign that we're very self-aware about this question.
And I think too that as you begin to identify certain traits in your sibling who may be narcissistic, you also begin to predict how they're going to react. So what I'm saying is narcissists are fairly dependable in terms of how they respond to certain things. And as one of the members of our group said, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You're absolutely right. I think that that's really an important fact too, right? It's the idea that a lot of times people will be very self-centered towards themselves and be self-serving their own needs, and really not have any problem in basically just dominating another person and such, and that's the stark difference, isn't it, between people that are empathic and people that are narcissistic, is that we tend to want to self-improve, right? We want to fix what needs to be fixed and what needs to be corrected for us. It doesn't mean we're self-absorbed.
Right. We take responsibility for our mistakes because we all make them. And we try to correct ourselves when we see the result of some of those errors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that what happens oftentimes within families is if we don't feel others look out for our interests, we may react in what looks to be like an egotistical type of way. But that's only because in some ways what we want is we want to maintain boundaries with others. And doing so can sometimes cause friction with others in our own family structure who may have been previously used to getting what they want, right?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, it's really difficult to figure out how to interact with a narcissist. It doesn't go very deep, the relationship and the conversation. And also, you're really not going to get your needs met. So I like what you said earlier, which is in some ways, if you are in a relationship with a narcissistic sibling, you need to abandon reciprocity.
Yep. Exactly. That's so, so important, and you and I were talking about that,
Mhm.
previously, just before we were recording, this whole notion of abandoning reciprocity, right? Not to keep score and such, because if we're keeping score, then it's never really going to be even, you know. But at the same time, it's important also to understand, that we rely a lot on feedback from others, so if friends, family, or colleagues have pointed out narcissistic behaviors or expressed concerns about our interaction, it may be normal for us to question our behavior. But I always come back to this notion of, where is the source coming from? Is it someone that's frequently critical of you? Have they freely criticized other people in the past?
Mm.
It's one thing when you hear it from a trusted source, but it's quite another when it comes from somebody who enjoys finding fault in others, right?
Right, and I think too that you can pretty much expect the same behavior once that sibling or that narcissist reaches age 25. And the reason is that narcissism is a fairly fixed personality trait and very resistant to change.
Yeah. And, I think that a lot of times narcissists don't tend to really examine their personal relationships as much, and this is something we do as empathic people in the sibling estrangement community, We tend to, of course, examine our behaviors, especially if we suspect that, our actions may be contributing to conflict. So, if we get criticized by our partners, of course, it can be hard to hear, but if it's founded and it's valid, then we want to know about it, because the thing with that is that we're highly adaptive individuals, oftentimes, and we can conclude that we can need to work harder at making this work with a narcissistic sibling. And that's the risk for a lot of empathic people, is that we take the onus on, we take the brunt of the work on, So I often like to say to people is careful with your adaptability, that it doesn't become a liability in having to displease people, or try to please people, I should say, in some ways, because that can be especially concerning, and it can be detrimental to your own overall identity.
And that's really indoctrinated throughout childhood, because what happens is one person dominates the scene, because a relationship with a narcissist is really a power play, a power struggle. And if you've been raised around somebody like this, where you're in a power play, power dynamic, you often have been traumatized. And when there's trauma, you tend to people please. Actually, people pleasing is an expression of trauma, and you're trying to sustain a relationship that has no reciprocity, and that's really tough.
Exactly. And that's the thing that happens with a lot of us, is that we end up working extra hard on this, and that's the risk with high adaptability. Another reason why people may be thinking or asking if they're narcissistic is often the cultural awareness that comes also with that word, right? So there's an awareness of narcissism and its impact on society, which causes people to be more attuned to that concept because we hear more about it, and it's normal that we start to analyze our own behavior when it comes to that. I'm just thinking of people that study psychology, for example. You're going to university, you're studying psychology, you're looking into the diagnostic and statistical manual book, for different disorders. You start reading through it and you say, oh, I think I got this. Oh, I think I got this, and most of us, it's simply not the case when we really examine ourselves, right?
Right, that, what is that, the doctor syndrome or something? I know there's a label for that. It's pretty funny. Uh, the other part of the problem is that the technology really heightens narcissism. So suddenly we're much more aware of this. In some ways, technology distills personality traits, and you can see online on social media those who are calling attention to all their great works, or those who are the star of their own show. And those things, I think, have brought narcissism to the fore.
Yeah, I think that's especially true, right? So technology certainly plays a role in it when it comes to vanity with a lot of people, right? That's the thing. It goes to their heads, especially, and all of a sudden, they grow in their ego, right? And
Yeah, it perpetuates it.
yeah. So we of course, it's good to consider, of course, our use of technology, what that causes us to do, and of course, what can, of course, build more egotism that can lead potentially towards narcissistic traits and such, So I think that most of the people in our community are aware of that, and I think it's a good way of closing for today, Fern. On the fact that, to answer the question, am I narcissist? I think, the answer is no. Most of us are not narcissistic in any way that we tend to worry about. It's normal to be angry and to experience different types of emotions, but it's also important to tell ourselves that we're not acting out because of a fragile ego, and that we're not trying to get a one-up on someone else through domination. It's about recognizing that we're caring, empathic individuals who continue to self-improve along the way of this journey. And, we might make mistakes. You're not perfect, I'm not perfect, but we aren't our brother, sister, or family member that can potentially exhibit some of these traits.
Yeah, and I think too, if you look at how you were raised, you might be able to gain insight as well. Narcissists tend to have been overindulged for superficial attributes. They're underindulged for parents who either detached or were unresponsive to their needs. And they also often experience trauma or abuse. So if you don't have those pieces in your history, you probably are not struggling with narcissism.
It's always great to be able to talk with you, Fern. I really appreciate us being able to explore this question. And it's really, I hope that today's video has been reassuring to people in our community, of course. Most of us are empathic, caring individuals. We just want to make ourselves better and self-improve ultimately. So let's talk about resources. What would be your number one resource at this time, Fern, in terms of, yeah.
I haven't mentioned this in a while, but we were talking earlier and I was saying of all the things that have helped me in my own journey, writing has been most therapeutic. And so I created the Sibling Estrangement Journal, and this is an opportunity to process your grief through writing and at the same time learn about siblings and estrangement. So I would encourage some of you to think about that.
That is a great resource. I do highly recommend people look into that. That is a great journal exercise that you have, of course, through writing when it comes to that workbook. My number one resource at this time, of course, is the Sibling Estrangement Online Support Group. That's very important for people to know that they can have a space where they can express themselves freely, empower themselves, talk about this issue that outside we can't really talk about with other people as much. So this is a place where we can, of course, experience a sense of belonging and a sense of getting some tools that can help us to move forward ultimately in this. And of course, I do offer some sessions for people that do want to delve deeper into psychotherapy with me when it comes to this. This is certainly a subject that I hold dear to my heart. This is very personal to me. And for me to bring out this message, of course, with you is something that's very, very empowering for myself. And also to be able to help others on a professional level is very, very important for me. So.
Our favorite topic.
Very much. So thank you so much for being here, Fern. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking with you again on sibling estrangement in the next video.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.